Every individual is unique, which is why personalized learning is the natural way for somebody to learn. And I think that's also why we all instinctively recognize that this is something right to do, and we're all here to promote it. Can we have a digital environment to own, protect, trade, and transfer our digital assets gathered in our lifetime, and be able to do that safely?
The digital ecosystem being adaptive, being open, transparent, distributed, scalable, sustainable, to really get at some of those issues that you just brought up.
The notion of personalized learning, we believe, needs to extend those options or those opportunities.
I don't think we would be where we are today if it didn't force us to really, teach differently, communicate differently.
The core value needs to be, this is about helping kids figure out who they are, how they learn, and what path they want to pursue and how they want to pursue it in life.
That's personalized learning is not just the digital. The digital it's one way, right? It's a method, it's a tool.
The pandemic is a perfect opportunity for us to look at how do we clarify our identity of what it means to be a school, to be a teacher, to be a student, and change our form.
In listening to the conversation, what strikes me is that we are on the cusp of redefining school from a place to a concept.
In this new ecosystem, we're getting better at meeting the technical parts. We just can't forget the social and emotional part.
Keep in mind the teacher as well, because I work with a lot of teachers in rural areas, and they're stressed right now with how much of their time, and they're trying to be personalized.
There's more to this. What we want to do is to form some focus groups. And so we need your help.
We're not interested in helping people replicate what was. When we talk about what we're doing right now, what the possibilities are, to us, everything is on the table.
Before I forget, and then everybody will get a copy of this. First off, just want to thank everybody again for joining us. We have some familiar faces in here. We had our first session last time. I think everybody that was invited, our new faces, hopefully you had a chance to take a look at a recording. We're talking about some really exciting stuff with regards to personalized learning. And just very briefly, the whole point that we created this group, K12 Thought Leaders, is really to bring passionate people, educators, leaders, everybody coming from different aspects within this industry together and share ideas. How can we work together to talk about some of the core problems and issues and take it a next step further? Not just talking about it, but let's work together. Let's figure out, let's digest these problems, and let's come up with a solution for that. Okay. And so obviously, one of the major topics that we've been talking about is personalized learning. This second session, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into it. I'm going to pass the reins on to Linda here, and she's going to do a quick recap of some of the key points that we brought on from the first session. So Linda.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, welcome. We're glad you're here for session 2. I'm going to do a little recap of what we talked about. Hopefully you had a chance to capture, spend some time with the video that we posted. If you have not, we'll include a link in our follow-up here so that you have it. But in our last session, we really kicked off talking about what is personalized learning? Let's define it. And so some of the points that came out from our listening session and the time that we spent together was, first, finding a balanced approach with technology. The next is understanding the needs and benefits of all members in the learning environment. We talked about building a culture, talked importance of how much culture plays a role in developing the learner and establishing trust in the process. The other aspects we talked about were the need to address policy, funding, and resources that are necessary to facilitate personalized learning. It's pretty important information there. Establishing open communication that will engage the personalized learning process effectively and securely. We're going to dig in on that a little bit more today. And then finally, knowing the why of personalized learning for you and in your context. And we really ended our session with that why question. And Kyle lifted that for us to keep us focused on why is it that we're talking about personalized learning? Why is it so important? And the fact that it is so important, how do we make certain that what we're doing in personalized learning will have the effect that we want it to have? And that's what today is really about.
Sure. Thanks, Linda, for that recap. There are a few things that I just want to talk about with regards to a digital ecosystem, because we kind of touched on this. What would a digital ecosystem look like for personalized learning? So I want to take some time to share some concepts of origin on how people have created ecosystems through collaboration, the possession of valuable assets for trade. This may help us better frame the personalized learning, what we are looking to do when we're trying to build this digital ecosystem. So first off, diversity and entropy has always been nature's way of evolution, and it's actually happening everywhere around us. So every individual is unique, which is why personalized learning is the natural way for somebody to learn. And I think that's also why we all instinctively recognize that this is something right to do, and we're all here to promote it. So in human evolution, diversity has created different skills and needs that have strengthened our society since the beginning of civilization. And different skills and needs have created different tangible and intangible assets from different people. And the need to share, exchange, and trade these assets for improved living. So through experiences, people found that trading was an easier and more beneficial method than, let's say, stealing or robbing or something like that, and also a means to create a win-win situation for everybody involved. So trading then became an essential part of survival and improving life. So when we talk about trading requires interaction and collaboration. Rules and agreements must be reached between all parties for fair trading to happen and for that to occur. The rules and agreements triggered the need for various types of things, such as enforcement, accountability, maybe penalties in certain circumstances, and credibility. So the human society has also recognized that different roles are needed to fulfill a trading process, and the contribution and reward of these different roles in the trade eventually attracted different people to assume these different roles within a balanced and sustainable ecosystem. So to evolve it a level further, the refinement and improvement of the ecosystem by all members through experiences leads to something like a civilization, where social and various cultural systems are established, evolved, and followed. And then the next step further is civilization further creates cultures and further diversification within each ecosystem based on common social behaviors, beliefs, customs, social norms, things like that, evolved into various cultures in society. So what am I exactly getting into? Well, let's go back and take a look at this digital ecosystem. And the creation and evolvement of the digital ecosystem will most likely follow a similar path. Even with all of the technology and resources that we have available now, we're still at the very beginning stages of a digital economy. So half a century of experiences has shown us that something must change to continue this digital evolution. The digital evolution is still done by humankind and will still follow the process of evolution of human civilization. So, can we have a digital environment to own, protect, trade, and transfer our digital assets gathered in our lifetime and be able to do that safely? And to do this, we must overcome the challenge to replicate a sustainable digital ecosystem that can actually service the needs of the existing ecosystem that we already have in real life. And this is just like when we're talking about personalized learning. So if we get into it a little bit further, the current digital ecosystem in general has a bunch of different problems that we're facing right now. And we need to evolve this in order to face those challenges. First off, do we really own our digital assets? And how do we claim those ownerships? What are the different types of digital assets that are owned by different roles in the real world. Like, can they claim ownership in the digital world? So when we look at personalized learning, there's a lot of different digital assets that can occur with different people that are playing different roles. So for example, a teacher, your certificates, endorsements, your credentials, lesson plans, research, those could all be digital assets that you own within that ecosystem. Students would have their grades, completed skills, things that they have mastered, accomplishments, things like that. The state and federal agencies may have teaching certificates that they're hosting, course certifications, testing results, things like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And obviously districts would have things like student transcripts, teacher records, courseware, things like that as well. And it goes on.
And I think, Alex, even thinking about it being sort of that portfolio, students could even put their best work into their digital ecosystem a little bit. So, and own that asset.
Yeah, exactly. So is there an easy way to buy, sell, and transfer right now these digital assets safely and freely? And can we actually securely and legitimize the ownership changes? And some of these things may actually be co-owned between two people, right? Or multiple people within the ecosystem. So all of these unresolved challenges are actually preventing us from properly functioning within a digital ecosystem. And I think we're seeing a lot of systems kind of focusing on a very particular collaboration, but not really looking at it from a complete perspective, a whole ecosystem as a whole.
Yeah, and I think, Alex, the definition that you sent out also really talked about the digital ecosystem being adaptive, being open, transparent, distributive, scalable, sustainable, to really get at some of those issues that you just brought up. So
yeah, exactly. So, the question that we're proposing, which I think we're already alluding to, is, is this serious enough that, we need a reset? We need to do something about it. And if we're going to build something, then what do we need? And so if we want to be able to handle the complex interactions between the members within personalized learning, some of the essential characteristics have to be there. And one of them, the first one, is we got to make sure that the digital assets that are created and owned by all the members within the ecosystem can actually be protected. They can be transferred securely and efficiently within this environment. And the other thing is we have to facilitate and provide tools to assist the interactions between members. It has to be more effective, right? Different collaborations, sharing, all of those types of things. We have to have the flexibility within this environment to interact freely and to be able to accomplish the objectives of each of the members within this ecosystem. So this next diagram kind of breaks down some of the key interactions and ingredients we may need in a digital ecosystem. All digital assets and their transactions need to be secured. Ownership and value of the assets must also be verifiable by credible resources. Mm-hmm. And the authorities to access the digital assets can be controlled by the owners of that. And obviously that's a huge thing on security, privacy, data, who owns it, who has the right to share it. Things like that all have to be, questions all have to be asked and discussed. So in conclusion, an ideal digital ecosystem such as personalized learning shouldn't violate some of the essential rules within this environment. First of all members must be included in the ecosystem. So when we think about personalized learning, it's more than just the student and the teacher. We have to think about all of the different ingredients, all of the different entities that need to be involved. The second is members should be able to freely interact to facilitate their role or their purpose in personalized learning. And all digital assets for all of the members can be verified, certified, protected, transferred, and traded. Mm-hmm. And more importantly, the ecosystem must be self-governed by the members. So it's going to evolve, and this evolution is really critical. So the ecosystem has to have that capability built in. So this next slide that we're looking at is trying to understand the breadth of what this ecosystem would include. And to understand what a digital ecosystem for personalized learning should look like, we need to explore a few things. First of all, what are the roles of each member within the ecosystem? What are the digital assets that they may own? What's the value to them? How would each of these members contribute within the ecosystem? Where's the give and take? What are they looking for as possible rewards, whatever that might be? What are the different types of interactions that may occur between these members? And how would they expect the interactions to be triggered or handled or managed? The technologies we believe are available to build the personalized learning digital ecosystem right now, if we are willing to spend time to understand and address the needs of all members that actually already exist in the ecosystem in real life. So this next thing, I just want to kind of pose this thought before we kind of talk about the breakout sessions, and Blaine will kind of talk about that. But let's take an example, an ecosystem of sharing resources. Traditionally, a school district has a certain, number of teachers that are providing instruction to their students. And generally, that's kind of localized within a particular region, city, whatever that might be. But obviously, this provides many constraints. What if there are classes that a student may want to take, but the district doesn't have the resources to provide them, or there's not enough demand to provide that instruction? So if we expand that, what would happen in the digital ecosystem? What could we do? Perhaps the student from District A could actually take courses from District B and access resources from Teacher B and also District C. They can also access that. Student B could also access classes from A and C. And we can actually share all of the resources and all of the courseware or all of the teachers across all school districts. I mean, obviously, this would be providing the students more access, also possibly helping the school districts lower down costs to be able to provide these resources and better learning opportunities, right?
Right. And I think also getting the very best teachers to the kids at the same time, right?
Yeah, sorry to cut in a little bit. Rich, you were talking to us about the case that may have that need, a certain district that they cannot, take certain courses. You want to expand that a little bit?
Yeah, I think in most instances, the opportunity for kids that are available, the opportunities that are available are limited by zip code. Mm-hmm. And so if I happen to want to take AP physics, and I live in a community that does not support, does not have the resources to support that, I'm out of luck. Although perhaps if I just lived a couple of miles away across a district line, I'd have access to that. The notion of personalized learning, we believe, needs to extend those options or those opportunities. That we have lots of conversations right now about achievement gaps and learning gaps, et cetera. What we're looking at here is an opportunity gap.
Yeah, I think that was brought out by the Department of Ed. They did a webinar that they're talking about the kids falling behind during the pandemic, and that you can't even go across state line if you wanted to reach out to a quality teacher in another state, even though you live on the border.
Right.
So those are great points, Rich.
Yeah. And so if we take this example even further, I mean, let's look at what if we broaden the ecosystem and imagine expanding it across the entire state, which we're talking about already, across state lines, being able to access teachers across the country, bringing in universities into the picture. I know we've all spoken about that before as well. Providing advanced learning opportunities for students that need that. This could be much wider than what it is. And I think what we're getting to right now is that if we really want to do something correct, we got to make sure that we think about it from a larger scale, that we had all of the members in mind. We understand what the interactions are, what the give and take are between these members, so that we can really, kind of develop and define out a sustainable, possible solution that can grow.
Alex, may I make another point around that?
Sure, Rich.
One of the other issues is, as we've described it here, we're talking about formal institutional learning. In the current digital age, learning takes place in any number of ways, and needs to be recognizable and recognized in order for the students to take advantage of those opportunities. So in that ecosystem, we also need to think about what happens when kids learn something on their own or with the help of someone who's not in an institution.
You're exactly right. Yeah.
Great point.
And so companies would be a part of that discussion, and the skills and qualifications that they have mastered, that should all be part of the digital asset that student carries, because they were able to do that. So
Yeah, it fits with the workforce development stuff.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, we want to get to the cafe and get to hear what people have to say. I want to thank everybody again, as Alex did, for attending our cafe to dialogue around the digital ecosystem. And so tonight, if you're familiar with the cafe, we're going to have a 2 rounds of small groups where we're going to discuss some key questions, and then we're going to come back and we'll do a town hall meeting. The questions that we're going to be pondering tonight is, what does that ecosystem for personalized learning, what's it look like? What are the non-negotiables or those values? What are those things that sit at the base of this ecosystem that have to happen so that everybody can benefit? Some examples might be privacy, access, ownership, and opportunity. We want all members of the ecosystem to benefit. And then how might that ecosystem express those non-negotiables as they go forward, so we can see how it comes out. We've talked a little bit about the members of the ecosystem, but tonight we'd like to hear from you if there's anybody missing from that, and then how do we help people interact and benefit in the ecosystem. So we'll do 2 rounds of, I think, approximately 8 to 10 minutes, Alex, and then we'll come back for a town hall.
Yep, sounds good.
We need more time.
I know.
Yeah, I think we need a little bit more time. Maybe we could just use the town hall. Is that, Blaine, is that kind of
Yeah, we can do
violating
whatever.
the
Yeah,
cafe?
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah, let's do that.
certainly do that.
I like
Yeah.
that. So we did not get a chance to talk about the second question very thoroughly. I don't know how others felt, but on how might an ecosystem express non-negotiables. But we had an interesting conversation in our session that we were just kind of starting in on really identifying and accepting that those values, privacy, access, ownership, opportunity, those are true. So those were confirmed to be values. And on the issue of access, it got brought up with regard to equity. And so that word equity kind of, the ability to make sure all have access, not just to some.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, one thing I was just about to say in Blaine's session there, I think historically, the historical information, the longitudinal information is very critical too, because education is not just a one-shot thing, right? So it carries for everybody their whole life. So I think somehow the thing got to be reliable and exist for the whole lifetime. So that's another thing I was thinking about and say, hey, that's pretty important for individual at least.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for organizations, it definitely has rules about how long the record has to be kept, right? So
Yeah,
I'm not an
good point.
educator, so I would assume every
About
state
7
would have
years,
that.
I think some of that is, and some of the
So
specific.
what are other thoughts about values that this needs to possess?
One of the things we talked about, Rich, and I think Mike brought it up, was portability, the ability to go across state lines, to go across district lines, maybe even school lines within a district. I know Kyle Holder and I have had some discussions around how to best, track that data. And I think to me, there's a real balance between the big data that the state and the district might want, and then that small data, if you will, that teachers need to really assess where kids need to be, either have their learning extended or to have their, to be remediated. So really having that being data informed, I guess, would be the key thing around that.
I would mention another thing is accountability, which is credibility, whatever you want to call it. It's so important that the data is valid, actually verifiable. With the digital age, I think it can go a lot further than just a grade. I think there's a lot of things can be recorded. I think that's pretty essential too, not just a grade to prove things, right? So it's supposed to have more than that to prove the mastery. Steve talked about mastery and things like that, right? So that's something I think can be done a lot better with the digital age now.
We had talked in our group because honestly, this is a positive thing that COVID has brought out, right? I think Kyle's jumped in on this conversation, and there's a positive piece that we can take away is the fact that it kind of shut our schools down in a way for us to work differently. And that's where the digital piece came in. I don't think we would be where we are today if it didn't force us to really, teach differently, communicate differently with other districts. Instead, we were like, here's this district, here's this district, here's this district. But now, because we're all in the same situation, we are crossing. Where you saw that chart, we are talking to school B and school C started talking to school A. And there's different conversations that are happening throughout the groups. Like I know I'm part of a group, a curriculum group every Wednesday, and I have a part of principals every Wednesday as well. And we are sharing what we're doing to be able to support that digital ecosystem. And also, like I loved it where it said beyond the zip code, right? I'm able to hear things that we can't provide within our district, but these are things that possibly where we could put some things in place, or because we can't provide it, how can we still communicate with the people in the districts around us so that it benefits our kids, right? And I don't know, I feel like at this time, it almost needs to start at that level where we're at that creativity with the curriculum itself and the curriculum leaders, and be able to say, how can we, like right now, we're looking at, there are some good things that we're going to keep when things can go back to normal, right? When we do have kids, every kid in school. But we are taking some things back with us from what we've learned and what we have used that is beneficial to students. I think Kyle had mentioned we have his own child that home works really well, remotely. And so how can we provide some of that? Because of, sometimes at schools, kids, they're more worried about who's doing what next to them. And a lot of kids that have been super shy have come out of their shell, and we've seen a whole nother side of them that they're able to bring and offer to the table when it comes to education and their learning. So I'm super
That's
pumped
awesome,
at
really.
this.
Sounds like collaboration is a value that would go into this ecosystem, and
Yes.
And that we've lost some of the competitiveness between school districts that are side by side, right? Because we're all in this together, so to speak. Great point, Billy.
Another value that I think about a lot and is the personalized learning. Who is this for? Right? Is this about privacy? Well, is this about access? What's this actually about? And it's about kids. It's about kids like my daughter who she doesn't do well in a traditional school setting. And we've learned that, and she's thriving in the setting she is now. And so, like the core value of personalized learning, I feel, and I could be wrong about this, but the core value needs to be, this is about helping kids figure out who they are, how they learn, and what path they want to pursue and how they want to pursue it in life. Right. And so it isn't about trying to fit them into a box. It isn't about trying to, we're trying to hit standards. We're trying to, whatever. But if my kid can go out and demonstrate to me the siren thing, that principle when sound, oh gosh, why is this escaping me? But you know how sound changes, like a siren gets higher as it gets closer to you, and then it gets farther away. My 7th grade math teacher or science teacher would be horrified. Right? But if she can go out, the Doppler effect, if she can go out and demonstrate the Doppler effect, right, by using a soccer ball in a, something like that, why does it need to be anything different? If she can demonstrate how gravity works by going to a local ski hill and showing me some tricks on a snowboard, if that's how she ticks and that's how she thinks, if we can use that to show that she's mastered the content, right, that's valid. And so that kind of puts the ownership. We're not just talking about ownership of the digital ones and zeros. We're talking about ownership of the learning itself.
Yeah, Kyle, you know what's so important about what you said there
Good
is
point.
that half those examples are not necessarily done on a computer either.
Right.
Right?
Mm-mm.
And that's personalized learning is not just the digital. And that's what Nancy was bringing out in our session, that the digital it's one way, right? It's a method. It's a tool that can be used in this personalized learning. But that soccer ball example is a great example, right? How do you
Yeah.
then document that, capture that learning?
And personalized learning is not just getting rid of desks and putting a couch in your room.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
But, so.
But the value there, I guess, because I'm taking a few notes, but the value there is student agency, would you say, Kyle, then? I mean, I know it's personalized, but it's that ownership, it's that student efficacy and agency that they're going to be able to own and drive their own learning, right?
Well,
I mean,
and
that's
it's
the
and it's
value.
about them. Yeah, it's about them.
Student centered. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one of the things I think I'm hearing here is that there's a decision that has to be made about the ecosystem, and that is, one, are we involved in trying to recreate what was before the pandemic, or are we trying to look and say, how do kids learn best,
Mhm.
and what things are we doing right now that we should stop doing? What things should we start doing?
Mhm.
And I don't know if that level of educational interest is where is part of the conversation or not at this level yet. It's a question of willingness. Is that where we want to go?
Right.
Or do we feel that's where we have to go? Or on a much more marketable basis, it would be, if you can recreate what we were comfortable doing, we'll buy you. My take is that's the wrong direction.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
agree. Yeah.
Well, and I think, what I go back to the slide with the different players in the ecosystem, like the school districts and different things like that. And right now, this one, the focus is on school district A, the focus is on teachers A, students A. In those columns, the focus is on the pictures, where a personalized learning ecosystem, the focus isn't on the pictures. The focus is on the relationships between the pictures. The focus is on the lines.
Yes.
And so the pictures become less important. Not that they're not important, but what's really important is the relationship between teacher B and student B and how that works out. Because if the kid in 6th grade has a really positive teacher with a English teacher in 6th grade, when they get to that 9th grade content, that 6th grade teacher might still be available for him. And because that relationship is there, that is now a coach for them for what they're doing now. And they're free to use that resource, and so in an ideal personalized ecosystem, we're not highlighting the who, we're highlighting the how or the relationship.
Yeah, I think relationships important. I'm gonna ask Sue Pressler to weigh in here a little bit on the idea when I hear people talking about adaptivity.
Mhm.
Sue, could you talk a little bit about adaptivity and how that might relate to this ecosystem?
So adaptivity is all about changing form while clarifying our identity. So what is our identity of schools? What is our purpose? What is our why do we have schools in the first place? And then changing that form to match what those needs are. And I was thinking earlier about, the optimal word for me anyway about all of this is personalized, because unlike what Kyle was saying, like I have a granddaughter who did not thrive very well during this whole
I have
pandemic.
2 more that didn't either. So it's
yeah. And so so what I'm saying is that personalized is what's so it not at the
Expense.
expense of someone else, that it's got to, and if we can get parents and kids to have that self-directedness, and I think the pandemic is a perfect opportunity for us to look at how do we clarify our identity of what it means to be a school, to be a teacher, to be a student, and change our form.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Just as an observation, my wife's a teacher, Nancy knows. But one of the things that I see within her school district is, sort of the pandemic already forcing, not forcing anything, but changing the way the districts are allocating resources, which I think is going to be a huge challenge. And one of the things that my wife's very good at is connecting with her students, and she teaches this remedial class, and she's a sixth grade teacher, so she's supposed to teach sixth grade, but her sixth grade remedial class from last year, that are in seventh grade right now, they're very difficult to deal with, and none of the seventh grade teachers know how to deal with them. So what they ended up doing is have Taryn also teach the remedial for the seventh grade. So she's following with those kids.
Looping.
And so this kind of normal structure of like, you have your seventh grade teachers or this, and then now, they're putting in more remedial kids into her class and things like that. But, also from that standpoint about, resource allocation and teacher to student ratio and what is the best way to move a kid up through the grade levels. I mean, I think that's all going to be challenged because there are kids now that refuse to leave her Zoom class during the day. And their parents will say, well, to be honest, we'd rather her be in your class because they stay active in there. Any other class, they're not, and they don't even want to go into those other classes. And so I just think that whole thing is going to change, or the parents are going to put pressure on as well to change the whole structure.
And the United States has notoriously been, what the Australians call tall poppy syndrome, where you cut off the poppies that rise to the top, because we don't typically, as systems in the United States, recognize teachers who stand like your wife, who's, people are doing that, and well, we do some things to recognize them, but we don't get into their heads about what is it that you do that causes kids to do this. Like, have her be metacognitive and teach others and look for those successes, because other people can learn that. They just may not, for somebody like your wife, it might just come naturally, but if somebody gets her through her metacognition of how she actually does that, we as a group of people called educators are not really good at reflecting for growth.
It's interesting too, Alex, as you were talking a couple days ago, I was thinking about just school and looping, and how more and more places are trying multi-age classrooms, and you're seeing that. And 50 years ago, that's all education was if you didn't live in a city.
Right.
And so I was, and don't kick me off the call for this, but it's just like, do we move back to a one-room schoolhouse type of concept? Not necessarily, but you're with the same kids, give or take, for 9 years, for 12 years. There are high schools in the Milwaukee area, Pius, for example, that does this. They group their kids together. They have homeroom every single morning together. They do all of their activities. They attend games. They're with each other for 4 years. Yeah, they go out, after the bell rings and do their separate thing, but they're with each other for 4 years doing school together, and the relationships that formed there, right? So, we look back at the, Leave It to Beaver age and think, oh, do we really want to go back there? And it's like, well, some things weren't all that bad. And maybe, maybe there's something there where an 8th grader can be a mentor to a kindergartner who's struggling, or,
Absolutely.
Those relationships, those multi-age relationships are built in. If you're a kindergartner, you're in a classroom, and the only older interaction that you have is with your teacher, and so you don't see kids modeling appropriate 2nd grade behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's right.
But I think personalized learning is that one-room schoolhouse where the teacher knows kids well. When you think about one of the elements being know your students well,
Mm-hmm.
You can provide voice and choice. That's absolutely right. Yeah.
And you know,
Absolutely.
we're getting ready to play with something. This is kind of big. Jason and I have been talking about this, but as we are really not only needing to know our own grade levels for personalized learning and those standards, it's also that vertical alignment as well, and those vertical conversations and the depths of what they need to know moving forward, and not just kind of only worry about your grade level. And so
Yeah.
as we move into more of the competency-based learning and the projects that we'll move into the personalized learning where kids have the voice and choice, we still have the standards to teach within there. And so Jason and I have been playing with, you know, the schedule for next year where we have, you know, the teachers that have their PLCs once a week, but also you have 2 of those teachers within that grade level that, so we have also within that 1 week, it's not all 8 of our teachers at a PLC, we have 6, and the other 2 attend the vertical conversations, and 2 teachers from each grade level. So that we're doing 2 things simultaneously so that we can get the depth of the conversation and move a little bit quicker and still have perspective of not only our grade level, but all grade levels and how that can pertain to personalized learning and project.
So you make a great point that helps us segue into some of our closing questions that I want to make sure we get to, because you guys this is great conversation, and I think it's very helpful to help, you know, frame this concept of this ecosystem. And so, Billy, you talked about, you know, the PLCs, right? And the structure inside that. You have these roles that are occurring inside this ecosystem. Teacher, student, principal, maybe professor at the college level, whatever the role is, what does that ecosystem need to do for each of those roles? Are we able to know what's necessary for each of those roles to fully bring themselves into the ecosystem?
Linda, can I just jump in on one quick thing? In listening to the conversation, what strikes me is that we are on the cusp of redefining school from a place to a concept.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we currently see school as a location. We see grade levels as distinct periods of time. You know, they're 180 days. And I think what all of this allows is the just-in-time learning for kids as they need it and want it. And I think, you know, this is allowing us to really reframe. And I think what's happening in society right now with the work from home initiative, you know, our kindergarten enrollment nationally is down 17% this year. And it's down because we have so many parents that are working from home that can keep their babies with them. And a lot of the companies across the country are saying they will never go back to full employment in an office. The work from home is here to stay, which will have the opportunity to truly transform where schools are and the number of people that will be able to do a learn from home model, not just a work from home.
Yeah, be much more homeschooling. Yeah, I get it, Mike. That's a good point. Yeah.
Well, but Blaine, the key is we don't want it to be homeschooling. Homeschooling, at least in our state, the school loses the aid on those kids.
Oh no, I get it.
We have to figure out how do we let them learn at home through our system.
Yeah, it's the e-school, right? Where they're enrolled in your school, but they're not there physically.
I was thinking along the same lines, and when my first year teaching, I had a Windows 3.1 machine, and I guess I would liken education to the transition from that 3.1 Windows machine to cloud computing today.
Yes.
So once upon a time, every classroom was like a standalone PC. And it only had the software that was on it. I mean, you had the teacher and what the teacher knowledge and resources were on it. There would be upgrades over time, but that wasn't necessarily easily shared because they were standalone computers. Then as districts, we began to network and share resources internally, and you could do some upgrades district-wide. And then recently, our ecosystem, I think, has changed, whether we wanted to or not. We became part of the cloud in that we had to look at things differently from time, from materials, from resources. And everything is available to everyone, and we become the coordinator of providing opportunities to learn and opportunities to demonstrate mastery. And again, the concept is not just a location, it's not just a time either. We shared a little bit before that some kids do work from midnight to 4 in the morning, because that's when they're awake. And that all goes back to the personalized learning. And whether it's us in work sharing Google Drives and resources that way, or schools are providing opportunities from kids from all over the world, whether it's from colleges, whether it's other online resources, or whether it's using the soccer ball to demonstrate the Doppler effect, we're now in the cloud where all of that is open and shared and available, which goes back to what we need to define in our ecosystem. How do you identify that ownership and shared and things like that? I think we're there. We're in the cloud, and it's a little bit wild, wild west, because we don't know how to live in it yet.
That's right. That's a really good point, Jamie. When you think about being in that ecosystem, when you envision yourself in there interacting and doing the work inside it, what are you hoping to have a benefit be for you as a teacher, or as a parent, as a school board member, whatever the role is that you come into this meeting today with? What are benefits that you're hoping you'll experience?
I think we have definitely, it's forced us to look differently at how we interact with kids. And we've learned a lot through this, going from the traditional classroom face-to-face all the time, and doing some sharing that way, to now being wide open and not even learning in the same place, or synchronous learning it. So it's how do we manage all that and provide those opportunities? But I want to go back to what this whole meeting started about, making it personal and the importance of the relationships and all this. It's not just a free-for-all and say that anybody can do anything. You're working to personalize and customize that learning opportunity.
From my perspective, I need it to be have it help us move away from creating a concept of schooling where adult convenience is the primary driver of change.
Awesome.
I think
any other thoughts on benefits?
This doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily a benefit that impacts me. How do you get how many school systems does it take to change a light bulb? Change? Right? Change is hard.
Right.
Change doesn't happen. And you asked the question, do we know enough to kind of quantify what each role needs to be in this ecosystem? And the answer is no. And I don't think we should try to, because as soon as you try, the documentation is the killer of innovation sometimes. You need to document, don't get me wrong, but as soon as you try to define roles, you lose flexibility, and the system becomes, you have to have some degree of flexibility in order for the system to stay what it needs to be, which is flexible to provide personalized learning. As soon as you put rigidity into the system, there is going to be one kid that doesn't fit into it anymore, and then it's no longer personalized learning.
Yeah, good point, Kyle. Real good point. How about one obstacle? What's one obstacle you're worried about that?
And I was just going to say that for me, this personalized learning needs to be easy for teachers to be able to do that, be able to understand who their kids are and what they need, and how, if their learning needs to be extended or not. So the ecosystem really needs to operate in a way, because teachers aren't going to do it if it's not fairly easy to be, it's not easy to do. So the system needs to be able to work relatively easy so that they'll actually take the time to personalize the learning.
That's awesome. Kyle has to jump out, but he answered my one obstacle. He put the word politics, and I think that's an important one to look at as a political scientist. That is my degree. I think that we've unfortunately turned that word into a negative instead of its good purpose that it's supposed to play. It's really those involved, but I get that point. And so, what else can be an obstacle that we would encounter in this ecosystem that could make it a challenge?
I think another obstacle is school identity. Like, it's going to be tough for people to see an ecosystem that lots of different, that goes in and out and so forth, because any of you have ever been involved with school redistricting, like, no, I am a Grand Island Islander. Like, what? You mean Kearney, Nebraska might have something better than me? And so schools in the United States, their identity is sometimes overrides the curriculum that happens at it. Whereas they don't have that kind of stuff in where I've spent most of my time in schools outside of the United States is in Australia. Like they don't have that kind of stuff there.
That's a good,
But-
yeah, that school identity is a good one, Sue.
Well, I think you bring up a good point because if we do allow kids to accumulate credits, let's say at the high school level, from different places, that certainly has to be verifiable, because who's given the diploma at that point? Am I getting a Grand Island diploma, or am I getting an Omaha diploma, depending on where I'm taking my courses from, right? So, and how many of those courses are able to come back into the system? So,
Jamie, you had some thoughts?
I was just going to say, I think in this new ecosystem, we're getting better at meeting the technical parts. We just can't forget the social and emotional part. That if kids are not there in person, if they're not synchronous when they're interacting with adults, there is depression and other emotional issues that many times the teachers are the ones that identify and help students get help or someone to talk to. So that's something we have to keep an eye on.
That's a great point, Jamie. Thank you for lifting that.
Can I bring up
Any other? Yeah, go for it, Jennifer. Yeah, please. Go for it, Jennifer.
Alex, I thought about your wife and how much she's demanded of and works hard. Keeping in mind the teacher as well, because I work with a lot of teachers in rural areas, and they're stressed right now with how much of their time, and they're trying to be personalized. So I think that's going to be an obstacle as we move forward, keeping in mind the teacher, and we want them to keep teaching. So.
Yeah, because there's a limit, right? There's a limit on all of us. And I think someone said it earlier, it's really going to be important. Essential tool is I need to know these things so I can do my best, right? To be the best for my student, for my colleague, whether it's in a collaboration. Well, we have gone over, we are so grateful for your time tonight. What we want to talk about is that we think there's more to this. And what we want to hear is from focus areas, whether that's from someone who's a participant in the ecosystem as a teacher, especially as a student. And so what we want to do is to form some focus groups. And so we need your help. We need you to maybe think about 3 to 5 folks that you would think want to be a part of this conversation and helping us to really flesh out more about what this ecosystem needs to feel and look like, and how we can make it be what people will ultimately, like Jamie, you said, they're going to want to, organically, there's going to be a need for that to be present for folks to address their individualized need. And Kyle, you talked about the fact that we want to stay flexible. And so to do that, we got to know where people's thoughts are about their needs inside that ecosystem and what they want to see it develop into. So will you do us a favor? Will you take just a few minutes, think about 3 or 5 people who you know are going to be passionate, like all of you have been tonight on this topic, and will you, reach out to them, ask them if they would participate in a session like we did just here, where they can give us their feedback and their thoughts. And will you send those names to Alex? His email's on the screen there. We'll send this PowerPoint back out to all of you so you have it for reference. But we think that's going to be the best thing we can do, is to start to pull people in and really get a good understanding about what is it that we've learned through this time, and what do we want to hold on to? And like Rich said, what do we want to cast away and get rid of? How do we really make personalized learning happen for our students? There's a great opportunity. We're in a moment right now that we have been given. Billy, it has been a gift. There have been good things that have happened through COVID. So let's capture the moment. So will you help us find those people who we can have some more conversations with? We'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I think Rich, you mentioned that you have some friends that are talking about similar topics, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that can be something that we really appreciate, that you can organize and we can talk.
Yeah, let me, Joe, let me
ahead.
just ask a question about that, because the work that we're doing is largely grows out of a group called Change School. And what we're not interested in doing, and I say it just clumsily, but we're not interested in helping people replicate what was.
Mhm.
And so when we talk about what we're doing right now, what the possibilities are, to us, everything is on the table.
Yeah.
We look and say, if the learner is focused, and I'm thinking the learner as adult as well as kid at this point, if the learner is focused, what do we need to get rid of? What do we need to do more of? Those kinds of things. What do we need to stop immediately doing?
Yeah.
And so when the people I invite will probably have the potential to be pretty annoying, as I can be, about those ideas. And I don't want to load the group with something that is in contrast to the direction that you hope it will go.
I'm pretty sure everybody in
Yeah,
this
everybody's-
meeting are annoying people. That's what we're all doing.
Yes. So welcome to the annoying club. That's good. No, Rich, I think it's important. And I think Mike just posted a great quote there. I do not believe in the institutional structure of public schooling anymore, is what he said. Richard Elmore quoted.
Mhm.
And I, as a public school product, as a proud public school board of education member for 25 years, I want kids to succeed. That's why I'm in education. I want kids to succeed. I want kids to have the best shot at doing what they want to do and what we need this productive society to be. So we got to keep talking. We got to keep pushing those limits about what that looks like. And so I invite anybody to the table. If we stay student focused, kids will be the winners in that, and we'll be the better for it.
And I think that's the purpose of the focus group and the purpose of the cafe is to bring diverse thinking together, to see if we can't come together and find something that would be beneficial for everybody and that will work.
That's right.
Again,
That's
we can have the best ideas and the best visions, but if we can't get it implemented, we're not doing anything. So,
Right.
I
Exactly.
think all that diverse thought together is really important.
Yeah, I would second to Blaine's idea there. I mean, we got to figure out a way to get there, right? So I think I'm really surprised on how many people really feel that the current system does not sustain anymore, and has that passion to change it. And I think we're not the only one. I mean, we're probably just a group that get together and talk about the same thing as other groups, right? Doing it now. So I think eventually there's going to be something changing. So we're just playing our role. I mean, if we can get together and actually come up with something, and definitely there's a marketing issue, there's a resource issue, there's all kinds of things about pushing the idea out, right? But I think things will become more clear step by step if we stay together and try to come up with something that we can show people.